My daughter erased me from her wedding for her wealthy stepfather, so I taught her a lesson she'd never forget, and watched her big day crumble. I used to think that a father's love was unbreakable, that blood was thicker than water, that no matter what happened, family would always come first. Until the day my daughter chose money over the man who raised her, and I learned that sometimes the hardest lesson you can teach someone you love is to let them fall. My name is Michael Turner, and I'm 52 years old. For the past 17 years, I've been both father and mother to my daughter Emily. When my wife Veronica walked out on us when Emily was just 8, I thought my world had ended. But looking at my little girl's tear-stained face that night, I knew I had to become everything she needed. I quit my evening tutoring jobs to be home for dinner every night. I learned to braid hair from YouTube videos. I attended every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game where she mostly sat on the bench but still needed her dad cheering from the sidelines. Looking back, those years tested every fiber of my being, but I wouldn't trade them for anything. Money was always tight, painfully tight. I'd teach my regular classes during the day, then stay after hours tutoring struggling students for extra cash. Weekends meant crawling under desks at the local computer repair shop, emerging with greasy hands and aching backs, but always with enough to keep us afloat. The hardest part was selling my old Honda Civic just to scrape together Emily's college application fees. For 3 brutal months, I walked 45 minutes each way to school, through rain and snow, my pride intact but my feet blistered. Colleagues offered rides, but I was too stubborn to accept charity. But every sacrifice felt like an investment in something beautiful. Emily was more than worth it. She was my universe, my legacy, the living proof that I was capable of doing something meaningful with my life. We carved out our sacred traditions from the chaos of single parenthood. Sunday mornings belonged to pancakes, thick and fluffy, with Emily standing on a kitchen chair helping me flip them while wearing my oversized apron. Friday nights were movie marathons, complete with homemade popcorn and her head on my shoulder as we watched everything from Disney classics to cheesy romantic comedies she insisted on choosing. But my favorite moments were our late-night conversations when she'd curl up in the old recliner next to mine, sharing her elaborate dreams of coordinating weddings and corporate events, sketching venue layouts on napkins, her eyes bright with possibility. She'd always end those talks the same way. "Dad, you're my hero. I never want to live anywhere without you." Those words kept me going through every difficult day. I should have seen the signs when Emily turned 23 and Veronica suddenly reappeared like a glamorous ghost from our past. Gone was the woman who had struggled with depression and left us with nothing but a note saying she needed to find herself. This new Veronica wore designer clothes, drove a BMW, and lived in a mansion in the hills with her boyfriend Richard Blackwood, a real estate mogul who seemed to have more money than sense. Veronica started calling Emily regularly, inviting her for shopping trips and spa days, posting photos of their adventures on social media with captions like, "Making up for lost time with my beautiful daughter." Initially, my heart swelled with genuine happiness watching Emily reconnect with Veronica. After years of carrying the weight of abandonment, maybe this reunion could finally heal those deep scars I'd watched her struggle with since childhood. I actually pushed for it, encouraged their meetings, thinking that having her mother back might complete something missing in Emily's life that I, despite all my efforts, couldn't fill. But gradually, insidiously, things began shifting in ways that made my stomach churn with unease. Emily transformed before my eyes in subtle but unmistakable ways. She'd returned from their outings wearing clothing with designer labels I'd only seen in magazines, silk blouses, leather boots, jewelry that caught the light in ways my modest gifts never had. Her vocabulary expanded to include names of restaurants that required reservations months in advance, places where appetizers cost more than our usual dinner budget. Most painfully, her stories increasingly featured plans and adventures that had no space for me, as if I'd become irrelevant to her expanding world. My attempts to engage her in our usual heart-to-heart conversations were met with distracted nods and swift topic changes. The daughter who once shared every detail of her day, every worry and dream, was becoming an elegant stranger living in my own house. The moment everything truly fractured was during Emily's 24th birthday dinner, an evening I'd planned with the same meticulous care I'd shown for every birthday since Veronica left. I'd spent hours preparing her absolute favorite meal, homemade lasagna with 3 layers of cheese, garlic bread baked until golden, and that rich chocolate cake with cream cheese frosting she'd requested every year since she was 9. The dining room was decorated with photos spanning her childhood, candles flickering warmly, creating the intimate atmosphere she used to treasure. But Emily arrived 2 hours late without apology, swept in wearing a stunning black dress that probably exceeded my entire monthly salary, her hair professionally styled in ways I'd never seen before. Throughout dinner, her phone remained glued to her manicured hands, fingers flying across the screen with urgent importance while my carefully prepared meal grew cold on her plate. When I finally gathered the courage to ask who commanded such immediate attention, she barely glanced up. "Mom and Richard are planning something amazing for this weekend," she said, her voice dripping with excitement I hadn't heard in months. The way she pronounced mom, with such genuine affection and anticipation, felt like a physical blow to my chest. This woman who had abandoned her 8-year-old daughter was suddenly worthy of such reverence, while I, who had weathered every storm beside her, felt myself becoming invisible in my own home. Things spiraled quickly after that. Emily started spending entire weekends at Veronica's mansion, coming home with stories about wine tastings and yacht parties. She began criticizing our modest duplex, making comments about how small everything seemed, how she felt trapped in our quiet neighborhood. One evening she sat me down and delivered the blow that shattered my heart into a million pieces. "Dad, I've decided to move in with Mom and Richard. I need space to grow, to experience life. I feel like I've been living in a bubble here, and I want to see what else is out there." I felt like I was drowning. "Emily, sweetheart, what do you mean? We're a team. We've always been a team." But she just shook her head, avoiding my eyes. "Dad, you're a wonderful father, but I need more than this. Mom can offer me opportunities you can't. Richard has connections in the event planning industry. I could actually build a career, not just dream about one." Each word felt like a physical blow. After 17 years of sacrificing everything for her future, she was telling me I wasn't enough, that our life together wasn't enough. The departure unfolded with devastating swiftness. 7 days from decision to empty room, Emily orchestrated her exit like a military operation, timing it perfectly for when I'd be trapped in faculty meetings and unable to witness the dismantling of our shared life. I returned home that Thursday evening to find her bedroom stripped bare, closet doors hanging open like wounded mouths, revealing nothing but dust particles dancing in the afternoon light where her belongings once lived. On my pillow, our old tradition for important messages, lay a single folded piece of paper with her familiar handwriting. "Dad, thank you for everything you've done for me. I promise we'll stay in touch. Love, Emily." Stay in touch, those 3 words haunted me more than any goodbye could have. We weren't business associates concluding a professional relationship or old college friends promising to catch up someday. We were father and daughter, bound by 17 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, homework struggles, and dreams shared over countless dinners. Yet she reduced our entire relationship to staying in touch, as if I were some distant uncle she saw at family reunions, rather than the man who had been her entire world. The house transformed overnight into a mausoleum of memories. Without Emily's infectious laughter bouncing off the walls, without her music drifting from her room, without her voice calling, "Dad, I'm home!" Each afternoon, the silence pressed down on me like a physical weight. Every morning, muscle memory betrayed me. I'd automatically reach for 2 coffee mugs from the cabinet, my hands moving faster than my brain could process the new reality. At dinner, I'd set 2 plates, 2 sets of silverware, 2 napkins, only to stare across the table at the empty chair where my daughter used to sit, animated and chattering about her day. The quiet was so complete it felt violent, broken only by the tick of the wall clock that suddenly seemed unnaturally loud. Our contact became sporadic and painful. Emily would call when she needed something: money for a car repair, help moving furniture, someone to co-sign a lease because her credit wasn't established. But gone were our long conversations about life and dreams. Now our interactions felt transactional, like I was just another service provider in her life. When I tried to arrange regular visits, she was always busy with Mom's plans or Richard's events. I started to feel like a stranger begging for scraps of attention from my own daughter. The final insult came 8 months later when I found out through Facebook that Emily was engaged, not from a phone call, not from a visit, but from a social media post showing her ring and gushing about her fiancé James Morrison, the son of one of Richard's business partners. The post thanked Mom and Richard for bringing us together at their amazing charity gala. There was no mention of me, no acknowledgement that I even existed. I stared at that screen for hours, reading comments from people congratulating Veronica's daughter on her engagement. I had become invisible in my own child's life story. I tried calling Emily that night, my hands shaking as I dialed her number. When she finally answered, she sounded annoyed. "Dad, I was going to tell you about James, but things have been so crazy with wedding planning. Wedding planning. She was planning a wedding and hadn't even told me she was dating someone seriously. Honey, I'd love to meet him. Maybe we could all have dinner." There was a long pause. "Dad, it's complicated. James's family is very traditional. The wedding is going to be quite formal. Mom and Richard are handling most of the arrangements." The message was clear. I wasn't sophisticated enough for her new world. Over the next few months, I became a detective in my own daughter's life, piecing together information from social media posts and casual mentions during our increasingly rare phone calls. The wedding was set for the spring at an exclusive country club. Richard was paying for everything: the venue, the dress, the catering, everything I should have been able to provide but couldn't. Emily was working with Veronica to plan every detail, and from what I could gather, it was going to be an extravagant affair with over 200 guests. I wasn't invited to any of the planning sessions, wasn't asked for input on anything. When I finally worked up the courage to ask Emily directly about my role in the wedding, she gave me a vague response about still figuring out the details and promised to get back to me soon. Weeks passed with no follow-up. I started having panic attacks, wondering if I would even be invited to my own daughter's wedding. The girl I had raised, who used to plan our future together and promised she'd always need her dad, was systematically erasing me from the most important day of her life. 3 weeks before the wedding, Emily finally called Dad about the wedding. "The situation is a bit delicate. James's family is very particular about appearances, and with Mom and Richard hosting, it might be less awkward if you just... Maybe we could celebrate separately afterward?" She was uninviting me to her wedding. My daughter was uninviting me to her wedding because I wasn't wealthy enough, wasn't connected enough, wasn't good enough for her new family. I felt something break inside me that I knew would never heal. "Emily," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I changed your diapers. I held you when you had nightmares. I taught you to ride a bike, helped you with homework, worked 3 jobs to pay for your college. And now you're telling me I'm not good enough to watch you get married?" She started crying then, saying it wasn't about me not being good enough, that it was just complicated, that maybe I didn't understand the pressure she was under, but I understood perfectly. I understood that she had chosen money and status over the man who had sacrificed everything for her. The day of the wedding arrived, and despite everything, I couldn't stay away. I wasn't going to crash the ceremony, but I needed to see her, even from a distance. I drove to the country club and parked across the street, watching the guests arrive in their expensive cars, wearing clothes that cost more than I made in a month. I saw Veronica, stunning in a silver gown, playing the role of mother of the bride to perfection. I saw Richard, proud and distinguished, walking Emily down the aisle I should have been walking down with her. I was about to leave when I heard shouting from inside the venue. Through the windows I could see people moving frantically, and then guests started pouring out of the building looking shocked and confused. I moved closer and overheard fragments of conversation. Something about the mother of the bride causing a scene, about Richard being caught cheating, about the whole thing being a disaster. My phone rang. Emily's name flashed on the screen, the first time she'd called me in weeks. "Dad?" Her voice was broken, desperate. "Dad, please, I need you. Everything's ruined. Mom found texts on Richard's phone. He's been cheating on her and she lost it." She threw wine at him, screamed at everyone, accused him of using us. "James's family is furious. They're saying we're trash, that we tricked them. They want to call off the wedding. Dad, please come help me. I don't know what to do." I stood there in the country club parking lot, listening to my daughter sob into the phone, begging me to save her from the mess her choices had created. For 17 years I would have dropped everything to rescue her from any problem. For 17 years I had been her safety net, her constant support, her unconditional love. But those days were over. She had made it clear that I wasn't good enough for her new life, that I was an embarrassment, that she was better off without me. "Emily," I said calmly, surprised by how steady my voice sounded, "you chose your mother over me. You chose Richard's money over my love. You chose to exclude me from your wedding because I wasn't sophisticated enough for your new family. Now your mother will help you figure this out." The silence on the other end was deafening. "Dad, please don't do this. I made mistakes, but I'm still your daughter. I need you." But I was done being needed only when convenient, done being the backup plan when her primary choices failed. "You are my daughter, Emily, and I will always love you. But love doesn't mean I have to rescue you from the consequences of your choices. You wanted to live in Veronica's world, so let Veronica fix this." I hung up and turned off my phone. Walking back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. For the first time since Emily had moved out, I wasn't anxiously waiting for her call, wasn't hoping for scraps of her attention, wasn't trying to prove my worth to someone who had already decided I wasn't valuable enough. The fallout was swift and brutal. Richard, humiliated by the public scene, broke up with Veronica that very night and kicked both her and Emily out of the mansion. Without his financial support, Veronica couldn't maintain her glamorous lifestyle and had to move back to a modest apartment across town. James's family, disgusted by what they saw as deception and chaos, demanded Emily return the engagement ring and made it clear the wedding was permanently cancelled. Emily, who had quit her job to focus on wedding planning and had been living off Richard's generosity, found herself unemployed and essentially homeless. Over the following weeks, Emily called dozens of times, but I never answered. She sent long text messages apologizing, explaining, begging for forgiveness. She showed up at my house twice, but I didn't open the door. Through mutual friends, I heard she was staying on various couches, that Veronica was working at a local salon again, that both of them were struggling financially. Part of me, the father part that had protected her for so long, wanted to reach out, wanted to help. But I had learned something important about love in those painful months. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the full weight of their choices. I wasn't trying to punish Emily out of spite or revenge. I was finally showing her what I should have shown her months earlier. That actions have consequences, that you can't treat people as disposable and expect them to be there when you need them. That love without respect isn't sustainable. She had spent months making it clear that I was inadequate, embarrassing, not good enough for her elevated lifestyle. I was simply accepting her assessment and stepping aside. 6 months after the wedding disaster, I made my own life-changing decision. I sold the duplex we had called home for so many years. The place where I had raised Emily, where we had shared so many memories, where I had clung to hope that she might come back to me. With the proceeds, I bought a small house in a town 3 hours away and opened a music studio where I taught guitar to local kids. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself, not waiting for Emily's approval or attention. The children I taught reminded me why I had become an educator in the first place. There was something pure about their enthusiasm, their gratitude for guidance, their simple joy in learning something new. I found myself laughing again, looking forward to each day instead of dreading the silence of my phone. I started dating a kind woman named Sarah who worked at the local library. She knew my story but didn't try to fix it or convince me to reconcile with Emily. She simply accepted that some wounds run too deep to heal with time alone. I changed my phone number and didn't give the new one to anyone from my old life. Through social media, I could see that Emily was slowly rebuilding. She had found a small apartment and a job with a local catering company. Veronica was working and seemed to be managing on her own. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but I also felt no obligation to rescue them from circumstances they had created. They were both adults who had made calculated decisions about what kind of life they wanted and who they wanted in it. Emily tried to contact me through old friends, through former colleagues, even through my sister who lived 2 states away. The messages were always the same. She was sorry, she had learned her lesson, she wanted to make things right. But some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt with apologies. Trust, once shattered, doesn't magically restore itself with tears and regrets. I had spent 17 years being the one constant in her life, and she had discarded me the moment something shinier came along. That wasn't the kind of relationship I wanted to return to, even with someone I loved as much as I loved Emily. A year later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Not for Emily, but from one of my former students who had tracked down my new address. Inside was a handwritten note: Mr. Turner, I know you probably don't remember me, but you were my English teacher 10 years ago. You helped me believe I could write. And now I'm a journalist getting married to another writer. I wanted you to know that teachers like you change lives, even when you don't realize it. I hope life is treating you well. I sat in my new kitchen, reading that note, and realized I felt more valued by a former student I barely remembered than I had felt by my own daughter in the final years of our relationship. That's when I understood the difference between being needed and being appreciated. Emily had needed me for financial support, for practical help, for emergency rescues, but she had never truly appreciated me, the person I was, the sacrifices I had made, the love I had given freely for 17 years. She had seen me as a function, not as a human being deserving of respect and consideration. The former student who sent that invitation saw something in me that my own daughter had failed to recognize, worth that existed independent of what I could provide. I never responded to Emily's attempts at contact, but I wasn't cruel about it. I didn't badmouth her to mutual friends or try to turn people against her. I simply removed myself from the equation entirely. If she wanted to build a relationship with me again, it would have to be on entirely different terms. Terms that recognized my dignity, my worth, my right to be treated with basic respect. Until she understood that, until she could approach me as an equal instead of as a supplicant seeking forgiveness for convenience, there was nothing to discuss. 2 years have passed since that disastrous wedding day, and I can honestly say I'm happier than I've been in years. My music studio is thriving, my relationship with Sarah has deepened into something beautiful and genuine, and I've found peace in a life that doesn't revolve around hoping for crumbs of affection from someone who once meant everything to me. I still love Emily, that will never change, but I've learned to love her from a distance, without enabling her, without compromising my own dignity in the process. Sometimes people ask me if I think I was too harsh, if I should have forgiven Emily and helped her rebuild after the wedding fell apart. But I've come to understand that there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I forgave Emily long ago, not for her sake but for mine, because carrying anger would have poisoned my new life. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean returning to a relationship that was fundamentally unhealthy. Emily made a series of calculated choices based on what she thought would benefit her most. She chose wealth over loyalty, status over authenticity, convenience over commitment. Those weren't momentary lapses in judgment. They were deliberate decisions that revealed her values and priorities. When those choices led to consequences she didn't like, she expected me to step in and fix everything, just like I always had. But real love sometimes means letting people live with the results of their decisions, even when it's painful to watch. I often think about the man I was before Emily left. Anxious, desperate for her approval, willing to accept any treatment as long as it meant maintaining contact with her. That man was slowly dying inside, compromising his dignity piece by piece, accepting less and less respect while giving more and more of himself. The man I am now has boundaries, has self-respect, has learned that love without mutual consideration isn't sustainable. I'm no longer afraid of being alone, because I've discovered that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel worthless. If Emily ever truly changes, if she ever develops the capacity for genuine remorse, and the desire to build an adult relationship based on mutual respect rather than childhood dependency, my door isn't permanently closed. But it's not open either. It would take more than apologies to rebuild what was broken. It would take evidence of real growth, real understanding of how her actions affected not just me but everyone around her. It would take her becoming the kind of person who could see me as more than just a father-shaped emergency contact. Until then, I'm content with the life I've built. I wake up each morning knowing that the people in my life choose to be there because they value me, not because they need something from me. My students respect me as a teacher and mentor. Sarah loves me for who I am, not for what I can provide. My neighbors consider me a friend, not a resource to be tapped when convenient. This is what healthy relationships look like. Reciprocal, respectful, genuine. The greatest gift Emily ever gave me, though she'll never know it, was teaching me that I deserved better than what she was offering. Her rejection forced me to rebuild my life on my own terms, to discover my worth independent of her approval, to create relationships based on mutual appreciation rather than one-sided sacrifice. In trying to trade me in for something better, she inadvertently freed me to find something better myself. I've learned that saying no to someone you love isn't cruelty. It's sometimes the most loving thing you can do. By refusing to rescue Emily from her choices, I taught her something I should have taught her years earlier. That actions have consequences, that people aren't interchangeable, that relationships require maintenance and respect to survive. Whether she learned that lesson remains to be seen, but I finally learned mine. The last text message Emily sent me about 6 months ago simply said, "Dad, I understand now why you had to walk away. I hope someday I can prove to you that I've learned from my mistakes. I love you and I'm sorry." I read it, felt a familiar ache in my chest, and then deleted it without responding. Love isn't enough to repair what was broken between us. Respect, consistency, and genuine change. Those are the prices of reconciliation, and until she's ready to pay them, I'm not ready to negotiate. I used to think that a father's love meant never giving up, never walking away, always being available for rescue missions. Now I know that sometimes the most profound act of love is stepping back and letting someone find their own way forward. Emily may never understand that, may never forgive me for refusing to save her when she needed it most. But I finally learned something more important than being needed. I learned how to need myself, how to value myself, how to choose relationships that choose me back. And in the end, that's the only lesson that really mattered.